All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging deep into the Shaolin Encyclopedia to pull back the curtain on something called the Shaolin Elbow Gong. You might also hear it called by its more poetic name, the Eagle Wing Gong. And get this, it's an 8-year journey designed to forge the human body into an actual weapon. So yeah, let's get into it. But let's start with a really basic question. Forget your local gym, forget all the fancy modern equipment for a second. How do you really build what you might call superhuman strength? The kind of power that just seems to bend the rules of what a human body can do. Well, the Shaolin monks, they had an answer. And this is it. This picture shows you the final mastered form of the Eagle Wing Gong. Now, it might not look like much at first glance, but what you're actually seeing is the result of almost a decade of just relentless, painful, nonstop practice. This is the destination. That's right, 8 years. This is not a weekend seminar. It's not a 6-week challenge. It's described as an ordeal, a complete transformation of your bones, your muscles, and your will. And the goal? To turn your elbows into weapons of devastating power. So, how does a journey like this even begin? Well, the setup is surprisingly simple. You just need 2 big wooden stakes, about 8 feet high, set about 6 feet apart. You connect them with a crossbar, and from that bar, you hang 2 sandbags. The person training then has to sink into this super deep, super demanding horse stance and just rest their elbows on top of those sandbags. Holding that pose alone is a massive test of endurance. And here you go. Here's the roadmap for the next 8 years of your life. It starts out with a weight that seems, manageable. But as you can see, the progression is absolutely insane. You go from a pretty modest start to a genuinely crushing weight by the end. Let's break this whole journey down. Okay, so this first phase, it's all about one thing, the grind. It's about pushing through pain, building that deep foundation, and just conditioning your body and your mind to accept this new, kind of brutal reality. Honestly, this is where most people would just give up. Now, what's really cool is that these images are pulled right from the source text, so you can see the early stages. At the beginning, the practitioner literally just has to endure the weight. Their elbows get bruised, they get swollen, they're in constant pain. But slowly, over time, they start to build the strength to not just hold the bags, but to actually start striking them upwards. Let's put some real numbers on this. Year 1, you're starting with about 22 pounds. The text says the skin breaks and the pain is just immense, but you practice every day. By the end of year 2, that weight has more than tripled to 75 pounds. And by year 3, you're up to nearly 130 pounds. And it's at this point that you can start to generate some real explosive power from your elbows. So now we're getting into the middle years, and this is the big turning point. Your body has finally adopted to the pain, and the focus shifts. It's not just about endurance anymore. It's about actively building terrifying striking power. And you can really see that transition here. The practitioner's form is just solid, unwavering. They're not just supporting the weight anymore, they are commanding it. The goal now is to hit those heavier and heavier bags with an explosive upward force, training that entire kinetic chain from the ground all the way up. Just look at this jump. The progress starts to accelerate like crazy. By year 4, they're handling 164 jin. Year 5, it's 210. And by the end of year 6, we're at 260 jin. That's over 280 pounds resting on their elbows. The power they're developing is growing exponentially. And that brings us to the final push. These last 2 years are all about pushing the absolute limits of human conditioning. And it all leads up to the complete mastery of the Eagle Wing Gong. Just think about that for a second. 8 years, every single day, through injuries, through exhaustion, through pain. So after all of that unbelievable dedication, what is the final result? This number, 360 jin. To put that into terms we can understand, that is nearly 400 pounds, or 180 kilograms. An absolutely staggering amount of weight to support just on your elbows. And here's the real measure of mastery. It's not just about being able to hold that weight. The training is only considered done, the gong is complete, when the practitioner can, from that deep horse stance, strike upwards with their elbows and send those 400-pound sandbags flying 2 feet into the air. That's the final exam. So, we've covered the how.
But that brings us to the most important question, right? Which is why? Why on earth would anyone put themselves through this 8-year ordeal? It's not just about lifting heavy stuff, it's about mastering a very specific kind of combat.
This whole thing comes down to a concept known as zhou fa, which you can translate as the elbow method. See, in Shaolin martial arts, the elbow is seen as one of the most powerful and effective weapons you have for close-range fighting. And this training, well, it's the ultimate way to condition it. There's this one principle from the text that's just fascinating. It says the elbow strike doesn't leave the chest. What that implies is that all this immense power you've built isn't used in some big swinging motion. No, it's a short, explosive, controlled strike that comes from your body's core. It's all about efficiency and devastating power in very tight spaces. So what do you get for those 8 years of work? Well, your elbow becomes as hard as iron. Your close-range power becomes almost second to none. You learn how to generate force from the ground up, right through your stance, into your core, and out through the point of your elbow. It's a total integration of your body mechanics for both offense and defense. And the source text ends with this absolutely beautiful and frankly intimidating summary. Once the eagle's wings are spread, they are terrifying. The continuous strikes from the elbows are peerless. It paints this picture not of some wild brawler, but of a master whose movements are swift, powerful, and almost impossible to counter. And really, that brings us to the end. The story of the eagle wing Gong is just this incredible lesson in perseverance and the unbelievable potential of human will. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What's the 8-year ordeal? What's the eagle wing Gong that you're willing to take on to achieve mastery in your own life?